All right, welcome, Dan. So happy to have you on today. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Lara. Very excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, you live in one of my favorite places, Colorado. Let's talk about your journey. How did you get to where you are? How did you get interested in movement and the body and mechanics?
Sure. So I grew up in Oregon, played sports, baseball, skiing, all that kind of stuff. And, was always very fundamentally minded. If you do the breadcrumb trail backwards, I definitely have always wanted to do things, even from a young age. I've always wanted to know I was doing something fundamentally in a sound manner. And anyway, so, my life journey kind of started there, went through skiing, was kind of a conduit for me to meet a lot of people, ended up in the natural foods industry with a product called Highball, which is a energy drink that we would sell to like Whole Foods, natural food stores. It was, like a healthy energy drink and kind of the anti-Red Bull. So anyways, built that for, probably it's been 18 years that we did that. And, during that time, I kind of found myself on airplanes in front of my computer nonstop, zero awareness of posture, just hammering through life, right? Just trying to get stuff done. And once things kind of calmed down, the company ended up being acquired, and that kind of allowed me to sort of, focus on, regaining my health a little bit more. And I found myself in physical therapy for the first time. I was in there with neck pain. And actually, that's an interesting story in and of itself. My father-in-law owns a chain of health clubs on the East Coast called Atlantic Coast Athletic Clubs. And he's 82 years old, big fitness guy, loves lifting weights. And he had this push-up challenge in 2018. And he said, hey, I'm getting a group together. We're going to try to do 25,000 push-ups in the calendar year. And you want in? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it was at the end of December. I was out there visiting my wife's family for Christmas. And so January 1st rolls around and I get an email from his assistant saying, hey, put in your numbers. And I was like, oh yeah, I agreed to do this. So you start doing the math. It's like, wow, that's 68 push-ups a day. And, just, I have 2 teenage kids. So, busy and you miss days. And I was making, hammering push-ups out on the weekend. And long story short, was just doing, way too many push-ups in concentrated periods of time. So what happened was I started getting some neck pain and was complaining about it enough. My wife's like, go see a physical therapist. I'd never been before. And it's the very first time. I'm 46 years old, going to be 47 this year. So, reaching that point where, I want to start kind of looking ahead and making sure I'm living, vibrantly as I age. And so I'm in physical therapy, really just absorbing everything the therapist is telling me. And the most interesting part for me, what really was kind of an aha moment was, let me grab my prop. I have for those listening, I have a broomstick in my hand. And this is something that's in a lot of physical therapy, rehab offices, sports performance centers, probably yoga studios. And what they had me do is hold it on my back. So I positioned the dowel rod or broomstick so it was touching, and I'm holding it with my, hand on the top and the bottom to position it to get contact on the back of my head, middle of my back, and my tailbone. And then they had me run through a series of hip hinges and squats and things like that. And being fundamentally minded, I just really connected with the movement. I was like, whoa, I'm feeling all this muscle activation in my core. I didn't know what transverse abdominis was then. I do now. I've learned a lot in the last few years, but so it was just really eye-opening, and I felt so much more connected to my movement. And so as I was going through, session after session, doing this kind of exercise, I was really starting to get hungry. I'm like, I want to bring this into other things. I want to be able to, work with kettlebells, weights, do floor work, ride a stationary bike, whatever it may be, and feel this continuous cueing to, really help reset my nervous system to understand where neutral is. So that way I can find it when I need to, and, get out of some of these suboptimal postural habits that I developed over a long period of time. And so I looked high and low. I was like, I asked the therapist, actually, I was like, do they make something that I can wear? And he's like, no, but that'd be pretty useful. And being an entrepreneur, I was like, I wonder if that exists. And I looked for it. I couldn't find it. And I was at a place in my life where I was like, okay, I think this should exist. Maybe somebody else would too. And so, fortunately, I'll bring my father-in-law back into the conversation. He introduced me to the team at Johns Hopkins, who he has a relationship with. So I started really working with the rehab team there. And they actually carry the device now, but they had a lot of input into the design, the development. I would be sending them prototypes, getting feedback. And it's been, just a really fun journey to take something where, I had no background in this, and I've gotten a crash course in the last few years, but it's something that feels really good because, you're helping people move better, understand, their body, that proprioceptive awareness, and, all the advantages of living in proper posture, better breathing, better nervous system function. Your organs aren't, scrunched and compressed, and, balance, when your base is centered over a solid mass, your balance improves dramatically. So, it's been really, really fun to be a student of this, but, for those viewers at home, we have a studio here that we've developed called BAKBN University. So I've kind of taken the journey that I've been on where I came from this not knowing anything, right? And really have learned so much. And so I'm looking at this through the eyes of where I was. And so we've teamed up with some of the top sports performance and rehab people in the US. And I have a guy named Mark Shropshire who's come in, and he's part of the company. He's our chief movement officer. And he's been doing a lot of tutorials. We've been editing content with the idea that we're going to help educate people and have this free content out there. So if somebody purchases our device, they're going to have a catalog of just, basic into really complex movements, depending on what their appetite is or where they're at in their journey, to help understand their movement, get the most out of the device. Because the last thing I'd want is for somebody to buy this and it ends up in a drawer somewhere. So I want people using it, I want people understanding, connecting with their movement, making all these, positive postural habits. And again, it's been really fun, and I've been enjoying every minute of it and being a student all over again. So that's kind of the quick story.
Well, I love it. And of course, I feel like we're cut from the same cloth talking about the importance of posture. Before we launch more into that, can you describe for people that are listening what this BAKBN device is? Because it's simulating what you felt like when you had that broomstick or dowel. And I use that a lot as well for getting that neutral spine position. But of course, it's very light, and it's kind of like a backpacky feel when you put it on, in terms of you put it on so you're wearing it, so you are receiving that feedback. I'm sure that must have been pretty challenging to develop, to make it user friendly, but also really technically functional.
Yes, no, definitely. Because, it's a very simple concept. And, you could take an exercise band and a broomstick and kind of simulate what this does. So, for people that maybe want to try that out on their own first, go for it. You get the idea. But we really wanted to make it something that didn't impede movement. So I met with a design firm out of Denver, worked with them extensively, and, came in with my rudimentary prototype that I built at a hardware store. I got a telescoping walking stick and a construction belt, some zip ties, and I was walking around the house and, asking my wife, what do you think? And she thought I was nuts. But just ran it through the paces, and I was like, okay, I think I have kind of a basic idea, like a square one. Took that to a design firm that designs medical equipment and all sorts of different, really, even like motorcycles and mountain bikes and that kind of stuff. So they kind of weaved together my basic prototype into what they were good at in terms of building sporting equipment, medical equipment, and kind of blended all that together. Because, I wanted to make it something that you could move really well with, but also, not look like a total dork wearing it. So, and I wanted it to be kind of fun to use. So, it was a lot of just, iteration, sourcing, ingredients, but not ingredients. Sorry. That's my,
materials.
that's my, beverage background coming, sneaking back.
Ingredients of biomechanics. Yeah.
Exactly. So sourcing materials, we have like latex free EVA foam for the frame, The elastic webbing we use is also latex free, super buttery, soft, and flexible. So, we have golfers using this. So we wanted to use it for really dynamic movements, as well as just basic movements as well. So yeah, we incorporated magnets. So there's 2 poles and they insert into the frame and they lock and stay put via magnets. So what's nice about that, there's 2 poles, and we actually have occasions where sometimes you just want to cue the lumbar region. You might have somebody who's really hyperkyphotic or has severe forward head posture. So you can just remove the top implement and just focus on that lumbar region and really get them progressing quickly where, okay, you feel this pull, you feel it touching your sacrum. Okay, let's keep that intact. Go ahead and pick up this kettlebell and let's get some basic, lifting going with an implement. And it really helps cement those patterns in the nervous system much more efficiently and effectively and long term, versus if, like the dowel rod or a broomstick, like I was talking about earlier, you have that on, okay, you feel this, great. Okay, now this goes away. Let's pattern this movement with load and see what happens. And you're kind of left guessing where you were. And with this, you're getting that continuous feedback over and over. So it's naturally just progressing your movement. So yeah, the device we wanted to design to really be functional in a lot of different ways. So, there's probably things we didn't think of that we'll think of later and continue to iterate on. But the one most important thing is we're living in this crazy tech world, right? Everything's tech, everything has an app, everything wants to give you data on your sleep, data on this, data on that. And it's like, after a while, people's appetite for data is like, I don't want any more data. So I wanted to make something very analog that people of all ages could use. So we have, I was on the phone with a woman who was 90 years old in Santa Monica. I have, another woman in Virginia that has Parkinson's that I've spoken to. They don't want tech. We have a lot of young athletes we work with. They're not interested in downloading, tech to their phone and having all this stuff. So it's just a simple, approachable analog device that you feel. And there's been a lot of studies with external cues versus internal cues. And as you, I'm sure, are well aware, when you're giving external cues, a lot of times people overcompensate and the musculature gets, rigid and moves in ways that you're really not wanting them to move in. Whereas if you have these internal cues coming from just simple tactile feedback, you're able to achieve that without that overcompensation. So we had all those things in mind when we designed it.
I think it's amazing because just like what you're talking about right now, I talk about posture all the time. I was just with a big corporate group and talking about finding this triple S, that what I call the skull, scapula, sacrum, that neutral spine alignment. And it's easy to find, but what I said to everybody is you have to get feedback because your brain is only knowing what it's experienced. It's going to go down that track every time. So that continuous feedback, and of course for them, I'm taking them on the wall, I'm getting them on the ground, using a pole or something, and it's really amazing during that time, and they can feel. But when they do something again, they might remember that it's a different feeling and they're trying to make that happen. So what I'm curious about is, in your own experience, when you were just starting to wear it around the house, how did that work for you? I mean, versus you're obviously athletic, and was it just like a very quick change that your brain adapted to?
Definitely. Yeah. I was just, the mental real estate that I had in terms of focus and even subconsciously, it brought it to the forefront way more in terms of where I was at in space. And prior to that, it wasn't even on my mind at all. So what I really noticed was, okay, wow, this is proper alignment. And I will say, we're not promoting that you have to live as a West Point cadet, right? Every waking minute of your life. That's not what we're saying at all. The spine is dynamic. It's meant to flex. It's meant to move in all these awesome, creative ways. But it does really help to identify where neutral is and be able to find it when you need to, especially when the spine's under load in certain situations, but also posturally. So I was at my computer, just trying it out, wearing it. And I'd wear it for sometimes 15 minutes. Sometimes I'd forget I had it on and I had it on for an hour. And what I really noticed was when I took it off, there was like a halo effect where I was just hyper aware of where I was in space long after. And I think that was sort of like, wow, this is how you make those this is how you accelerate those adaptations, is by being conscious of your movement, conscious of your alignment. And it's, everybody's going to fall into suboptimal posture all the time, but to have that little extra, voice in your head going, okay, where you at? Where you at? And it almost happens subconsciously after a while. And I've really noticed, my posture's improved dramatically just because it's on my mind more. And this really helps. I notice if I don't wear it maybe for like a week or two, or you're on a trip or you didn't have it with you, I kind of notice myself, forgetting a little bit, and then I'll put it back on. I'm like, okay, I'm back. Okay, this is, more on top of my conscious mind. So,
and I think that's a really important point, is that we're going to be improving that postural awareness. But if it's been years of not being in that space of the most optimal posture, you're going to need more feedback more frequently. And then you can kind of wean off for a while and maybe go away for a week, and then you can return to it and might need it some more, because there's always what I talk about in brain, neuroscience and brain mapping, is that there's always going to be that path that was very, very well grooved the way you were before, like that suboptimal, especially people have been sitting for a while with that kind of tech neck, and they're going to be pulled into it more and more. So there's just it has to be repetitive. It has to be continuous. And then you get to a point, I think, where, and it sounds like you're at this, where your brain has adapted to enjoying this other alignment a lot more, and you get signals quicker. Like, I think, like if I sit in a slouched position for a short amount of time, I get signals. I have a very quick communication with my brain. It's like, it quickly is like,
makes sense,
right? Versus somebody who's used to slouching, I think it dulls the nervous system. So I'm curious what you have found in like the people that you've worked with, in your own body, like how your nervous system, because I think people don't always, of course, biomechanically, this is amazing. We need to know neutral spine. And like you said, we're going to move out of it, of course, but we need to understand that foundation. But the nervous system part, I don't think people are always aware of how much our posture impacts that. How would you say, what is the feedback you've gotten on that?
Yeah, what I've learned just through working with people much smarter than myself is that the nervous system is so dynamic and open to change. And what happens when we, have patterns or habits that are suboptimal, for example, slouching in front of a computer, not being aware of where your head and neck positioning are over a long period of time, that becomes your new set point in your nervous system. And your nervous system is really designed to identify, okay, do I feel safe? Is this the safe place for me to be? And over time, you're basically telling your nervous system, this is safe. This is where I need to be. This is my set point, right? Where I've lived most of my, time in this position, if, in front of a computer or whatever it may be, driving a car, that just becomes habit and automatic. And really what you're trying to do with a device like this, or your curriculum and what you're teaching over and over, is help people understand that you can create new adaptations within your nervous system and move that set point and create a new, healthier, optimal set point within your nervous system that allows your body to function so much more, positively. And so that's been the biggest takeaway. Also, just using, weight. So when you introduce load to movement, that really wakes up the nervous system. So for example, if you're moving in suboptimal patterns and you have your weights in your hands and you're doing different loaded movements, you're now cementing those patterns into your nervous system. So it really does, it's important to take care in being aware of your movement, especially when you're introducing load to that as well. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of some of the things that I've learned through this process about how amazing the nervous system is.
It is. It's really amazing. And I think in a way, there hasn't been a lot of research on this, but there has been some kind of correlations that make sense to me. And I feel like that we adapt from a physiologically standpoint, even if it is suboptimal, but I don't know if we necessarily always feel safe. I feel like, in fact, especially with the forward head, That is such a position that tells our primitive part of the brain, more in the hindbrain. It kind of closes down that area. There's not as much information going in. And I feel like it's a very, it's a position that simulates unsafe, danger. So we might be sitting at our desk not feeling like anything major danger is going to happen, but the stress response is still high. So I think the cortisol levels are still probably high because even though nothing is dangerously happening. And so I've seen people, I'm sure you've seen them too, who like are working, not moving very well, doing well in life, but they can't manage their stress. And by managing, the postural muscles are highly correlated with stress response. All the axial extensors, they're the ones that are like, when we kind of light up for getting ready to freeze or, flee. And so when we are better aligned or we're more balanced, the pull on the tissues is more balanced. Like you said, you have more expansion for your lung capacity, but also for your organs of digestion. But also I think the nervous system is calmer. It's like, okay, I'm not in this agitated state that I don't recognize why.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And it brings up another point about posture just being reflexive. It's reflexive of your emotional state of, where you're at in your life. And a lot of times it's a mirror image of, the thoughts you're holding or the, emotions, right, that you're holding inside. So it all, the whole system works together in a positive or negative way, depending on, where you're at mentally, right? So.
Yeah. So tell me more about how you're wanting to bring BAKBN, this amazing device, into different settings. I'm sure into PT clinics, into gyms. You said golfing. You were mentioning this older population. Do you have any big plans for how you want to expand?
Yeah, that's kind of the challenging part because there's lots of channels, right, to go after.
Yeah, everybody needs it.
Share.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a matter of kind of just being as efficient as possible. Clearly in a rehab setting, there's a lot of opportunity. And it's already, I'm in Boulder, so CU Sports Medicine, they're using the device there. Johns Hopkins, as I mentioned, uses it in their rehab and sports performance facilities. So, sports in general, I have 2 teenagers that are both, my daughter's a lacrosse player, my son plays baseball. I'm designing all of the fitness programs and coaching for my son's baseball team in high school. And so I get a kind of a firsthand look on movement there. And, I really, just because of where that's at, I'm at that point in my life where this is a focus for me. I'm really hungry to help these kids understand their movement because they're growing so fast. So you take a high school athlete, for example, they're growing so fast, they're a different person, than they were 2 weeks ago. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that affects, there's just so much going on. So I look at that as an exciting channel. I look at rehab as an exciting channel. Golf, besides the fact that golfers love gadgets and, just love to geek out on their swing, there's a lot of just, really simple things you can do with the golf swing in terms of just setting up an address. Also that cueing you get from the contact on the poles on follow through, because a lot of people finish forward and just have no idea where their body's occupying space around them. So that's another good one. Stationary bike, people jump on the stationary bike and sometimes they just go, let's just get this over with. And they're staring at their feet for 45 minutes. And so if you're taking the time to be on the bike, why not address your posture and have that halo effect stay with you for a couple hours, or more after, and really reinforce your posture. Walking gait, you mentioned the geriatric population. So, been working with a lot of osteoporosis specialists and learning a lot about, that journey and all the challenges associated there. And movement is, critical and in a really big way. And understanding movement has big consequences there. Spinal fusion therapy is another one where people come out of that and they're just scared to death to do simple things like unload the dishwasher. And so to have something that kind of reinforces, okay, I can kind of get my movement back and baby steps and learn how to kind of reapproach life after something like that. That's another exciting channel. And my favorite though is, so we've done some stuff with, senior care facilities, and they're just so fun to work with because
Oh yeah.
they're so receptive. They want to learn. They learn like the learning curve is so fast because they're just absorbing and they want to improve. So that's been really fun because a lot of times, especially as we age, our balance centers, deteriorate at a certain percentage every year after, you're in your 30s and you get up to that, older age range, and falls are, very, risky and are definitely high risk. So it's something that you can alleviate by, again, centering your base over a solid mass and learning where that alignment is, but also pain mitigation. You have people, seniors in their 70s and 80s who love to walk their dogs, and they're like, my back, everything's been hurting. And so if you can teach them proper movement mechanics, all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, normally when I stand for 5 minutes, I'm feeling pain, but I've been standing for 10 minutes and I don't feel my pain. What's going on? And it's just sometimes it's a simple fix of them just understanding and developing a deeper sense of their movement. But so that's my favorite. But I don't know if that answers your question, but there's
I love it. Like you said,
channels and ways to share it. So.
Everybody needs it. But going back to your own experience, because again, this helps the seniors, this helps the golfers, this helps the young adults. When you were saying when you found that neutral spine posture, all of a sudden you felt different in your core. Can you tell everybody who's listening, because you'll do it, I think, in a good way, maybe versus a PT, like how did it, why is that so important to engage these deep core muscles properly?
Yeah, so my first experience was like kind of just this lightning bolt of activation because these muscles had basically atrophied over time and I wasn't connected to them and I didn't even think about them. So the transverse abdominis being that corset around your core that goes all the way back to your spine, has so much to do with supporting your spine and postural alignment. So when I had that dowel rod on my back for the very first time, all of a sudden I felt that activation. I felt, with my neck and the smaller muscle fibers in my neck and upper back, a lot of times what happens is you recruit the bigger muscles and those smaller muscles don't get any attention. And so when you all of a sudden tune in to your body and tune into all these little support structures that help you live better, it's like, wow, okay. So that was to me the wake up call. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I just knew what I felt. And I knew there's something here and this is awesome. And I want to be able to do more of this and understand more of this. And I
love
did,
that.
one thing I did leave it. Yeah. And one thing I did leave out was yoga, right? So I've talked Boulder's a big yoga community. I've spoken with lots of, yoga instructors. People have their own practice and studios. And so it's been fun to kind of learn a little bit about that channel because a lot of times it's the very same thing, especially when they're doing one-on-ones. It's really beneficial to teach, in that environment, you have a better ability to teach somebody more intimately about their movement versus like a large class setting. So a lot of it's been kind of the conversation's kind of steered towards, yoga being something that when they're working one-on-one, it could be really beneficial to helping people. So I did want to bring that up.
Yeah, really beneficial.
Yoga's your biz. Yeah.
Yes, it is. I do. Yeah. But here's my big question. If doing those push-ups now is going to feel a lot different, right? If you could do whatever the 1,000 push-ups a year, because with that, you're stabilizing your center. And so you're not going to, because like you said, a lot of people, when their neck is not in alignment, when they're doing a push-up, they're going to really aggravate the neck, the upper back, recruit all the bigger muscles, which of course are being used, by the way, in push-ups, but they're going to function a lot better when you have the stabilizers doing their job so that you can move well and you can make that bigger movement pattern without kind of having what I would say are leaks of energy. Did you notice that in your own push-ups?
Oh, definitely. And I also noticed it in my lumbar because you're hammering a lot of push-ups out. Sometimes you get lazy in the core, you let your belly sag, and then all of a sudden you're getting all of that pressure on your lumbar spine. So it really kind of woke me up, not only to the upper extremity, cervical and thoracic, but lumbar as well, and really making sure that alignment was there, so I wasn't, creating this huge gap between the pole and my lumbar spine, and really getting that sucked up so I could really engage, that area and keep the spine stable and injury free. Because you'll notice if you hammer on a lot of push-ups with a sagging belly, you're going to start getting back pain pretty quickly.
Yeah, and in fact, I have used your BAKBN device on 2 of my private clients, both of them males, who both have,
oh, cool,
they're very strong, but they both came to me with low back pain. And, it's like, because you can execute a movement if you're globally kind of strong, but if you're not strong within, at some point, you're going to feel the effects of that. And they were feeling in their low back. So I really worked on it with the squatting, with plank and lowering. So, whether it was like a more narrow push-up or a wide push-up. And it is so helpful because, again, I can be sitting there and have my hands on them and telling them, but to have that feedback and say, okay, lift your front up toward that and keep the contact points as you move through space is really a game changer. So this is just brilliant. I love that you, as an entrepreneur, really decided to create something that would help you, at knowing that it would inevitably help others because you're athletic, you're very active, and still needed some assistance there. So I think it's a really brilliant device.
It's very simple too. I'm a simple guy, so I'm not some, not some high IQ guy. I like simple things that I can understand.
Yeah.
And so that's
and it's very portable. So where can people find out more information? Where can they purchase it?
Yeah. So we have a website. It's bakbonhealth.com, spelled BAKBN health.com. We're on Instagram, a lot of cool stuff. We're going to be putting more information about BAKBN University, helping people understand foundational movement patterns so they can get the most out of the device. Our Instagram handle is BAKBN, BAKBLN _posture. So that's the 2 best channels to check out the device.
Yeah, and everybody check it out. And also, if you want to see this live, you can go to our YouTube channel and see, Dan actually holding this. And but if you go to the website, it's a wonderful website. It has all the information. It has videos, and again on the YouTube channel. But I think it's brilliant. As a triple S lecturer, devotee, this is what I talk about every single day, and everyone's always surprised how easy it is to have this logic and then implement it, but to have a device that's giving you the feedback is just a next level thing. Yeah. So, yep, he's wearing it right now.
This is it on.
So fun. Yeah. Yeah. Super easy to put on. Took you 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for your time, Dan. I really appreciate this extraordinary gift. Really, I feel like you're sharing a gift that you really designed on your own. I love that you were doing it in your own garage and then went out and got help. But thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you too. Thank you for the support and all the information, and just giving me an opportunity to share this. So really, really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. And for everybody listening, as always, I'm pulling for you.